I made a video recently on the tragedy that happened on September 10th, but there's just a few other things that I kind of wanted to talk about. You know, a week before the tragedy that took place in Utah, rest in peace, there was another event that transpired. You know, there was a innocent Ukrainian woman, Ukrainian refugee that was brutally murdered and stabbed to death by someone on a train. Earlier this year, there was another murder that took place on a school, the Carmelo Anthony incident. And obviously, this year has not been the best for race relations, it seems. There's been a lot of tension. I say this because I know that we're living in scary times right now with everything going on in the news, everything that's been happening in recent events. We're living in scary times. We genuinely are. That doesn't make you weak for thinking that or saying that, because it's true. We are living in scary times. But I'm making this video because I want to say one thing. I want to say, don't be scared, but be aware. That's what I want to say. Because fear doesn't do anyone any good. Fear is how they control you. Fear is not living with God. Fear is not being righteous. There's nothing righteous about being afraid. Fear is weakness. But there's a healthy fear. There's a healthy amount of fear that one ought to have. You don't put your hand on a hot stove because you have a fear that it'll burn you. You are aware that you will be burned. It's very similar to the fear of God. And that's what we really need to have right now. We need to have a fear and an understanding of how the world works, of what's actually happening. You need to be aware of patterns. You need to have pattern recognition right now. Pattern recognition is what keeps you alive. That's what keeps you safe. Being able to understand threats, being able to decipher between who is the enemy and who is your friend. Because right now it's hard to tell. And it's not about race. You know, the Bible says there is neither Jew nor Greek, nor man nor woman, nor slave nor master. It's not about race. But the reality of it is that when you are in an area where there's a lot of thugs and a lot of lawless people, then you have to be careful and you have to be aware of that ultimately. That's what it boils down to. It's just like what I said in the last video. Your naiveness will get you killed. Your naivete will be your undoing. So you better pay attention and you better learn and you better listen, because you're not going to get many chances. Maybe we've already had too many chances. Maybe there is no more chances. There's no more lucky breaks. Now it's time to really start paying attention and waking up and realizing that we can care about other people's feelings and opinions, and we could say we care about these kind of things. But ultimately, your life is not worth making sure you protect someone else's feelings. Your life is not worth making sure someone else doesn't get offended. You don't care about that, and you shouldn't. If you care too much about stuff like that, you're dead. That's how you die. You can never be too safe. I'm saying this because I don't want any more people to die. I don't want any more good people to die. And like I've said before, I don't think I can say it enough. Don't be scared, be aware. You know, Charlie Kirk talked a lot about putting on the armor of God. And that's why he wasn't afraid of what happened to him. And I don't think that he was wrong in that. I think he was 100% right. And obviously, he was that kind of person to where he wasn't afraid of dying for what he believed in. I mean, he embraced it. You know, we don't know how he would have actually felt in the time, you know, if he would have still, you know, taken that option. We don't know. We don't know how his reaction would be, because you never really know until you're actually faced with the moment. But obviously, as Christians, we're called to acknowledge Christ and be righteous even in the face of death. Hey, so It's me from the future. I didn't finish the point that I was going to make here because I ended up getting too much into the gameplay and I forgot what I was going to say. But basically, the point I wanted to make was while, yes, we can't have martyrs, that's not the goal of everyone. That shouldn't be the goal of many people. If anything, it's rare and it's only for a select few. I think we have to be really careful about that, and not get too crazy about wanting to die for a cause. I don't think that's in the books for most people. I think most people should be open and aware and should be proud of their beliefs, especially if their beliefs are founded in truth and in reality and they are on the right side of history. But, be careful about wanting to go down as a martyr, because we have to really ask ourselves, what does God want? Where is our will in relation to God? Are we sharing the same will with God? Are we doing what God wants us to do, or is it something else? So that's something to be aware of. I guess I have to actually talk about what I wanted to talk about. I know one of the things that I wanted to talk about was my personal experience and how I've been keeping myself safe. I will say this. When I'm walking around, when I'm in an area and I see thugs walking around near me, I pay attention. I perk up and I'm keeping my head on a swivel. I'm aware of what's going on around me. That's all I ask. Is that we pay attention and that we're being aware of what's going on. We don't go to these bad areas. Maybe you have to rethink about how you go to work. Maybe you don't go through the bad areas anymore. Maybe you don't go to the party anymore. Maybe you take off the headphones when you're walking around. Maybe you pick your head up when you're walking around and you're paying attention. You're not looking down at your feet. Or maybe you are. Maybe you're paying attention to where you're stepping. All of this stuff matters. All of this stuff matters. Because if you're not taking the right precautions, it could cost you your life. It could kill you. It very well could kill you. And I don't want to see any more good people die at the hands of monsters. Some people don't really realize that there are some people who don't play by the rules. We think laws are going to protect us. But what happens when we run into individuals who don't care about the laws? What do you do then? You can't do anything. Not everyone cares about the laws like you do. Not everyone has the same morality as you do. Not everyone is in agreement with what is acceptable and what's right. Some people, simply put, they're not playing by the same rules as you and me. For some people, the only thing that governs their actions are the rules of the jungle. Okay? There are no rules. Some people hate you. And it's not because of anything that you've done. It's not because you're wrong. Some people hate you because you're right. Some people hate you because you're on the right side of history. And they're not, and they're evil. And they harbor evil within their souls. You have to be aware of the evil. If you want to protect yourself, you have to be aware of the evil. You cannot live in a false reality and then be surprised when evil strikes. You can't do that. You see that girl get stabbed to death on that bus. I can't help but think about how she would still be alive if she were a little bit more racist. And I know that's a horrible thing to say to some people. I get it. But that's the reality of the situation that we're dealing with. If she were a little bit more cautious and not afraid about hurting other people's feelings, she'd still be alive. I'm not blaming her for that. I'm blaming for what she's been taught. That she's been taught to deny her own instincts. You have to trust your instincts on this, guys. You have to understand basic instincts. Even a child knows. This whole idea that race is, you know, invisible, or that we can't see race, it's just nonsense. Even children see race. It's one of the first things they notice. Again, I'm not saying that this is I'm not necessarily saying that this is just about race. Obviously, it goes beyond race. If I was in China, I would not be going around the areas in China that have the most crime. You know, I would not be going around the areas in Italy that have the most crime. You know, obviously. I don't think I even need to say that. I think that should just be obvious. But it just so happens that in this country that we're living in, those are the ghetto areas. Those are the black neighborhoods. That's where you have to be afraid. Especially if you look like me. Because many of them hate people like me. They hate me because of the way that I look and because of what I believe. You know, that attack on the train was clearly a hate crime. Even after the fact, even after he did it, he said, "I got that white girl." That's what he said. That's a hate crime. By definition, that is a hate crime. So, in a similar sense, I'm sure black people have lived in fear at certain times of history, maybe even now, in fear of hate crimes. You know, fear of the KKK, you know, stuff like that. Well, in the same sense, white people have to be afraid when they go into these certain areas. It's like black people in rural South have to be afraid of lynching historically and stuff like that. Guess what? We as white people, we have to be afraid when we go to places like Detroit or Chicago and these other places to have a high density of gang violence. You have to be aware. You know, what is more worth it, your life or someone else's feelings? You have to ask yourself that question. What is more worth it? Your life or someone else's opinion? Someone else's feelings? I don't know about you guys, but my life is way more worth it. Way more. And even if, for whatever reason, you think that someone else's opinion is more important than your life, well, I disagree with you. And I will stand on that. And I will protect your life. Not physically, but I will say to you, no, your life is more valuable than their feelings. But ultimately, it's your life in your hands. You have to defend yourself. I can't defend you for you. That's not how it works. You know? You have to defend yourself for yourself. There's only so much that one person can do to protect someone else from this. You know, it's like a disease. It really is. It's like a pathogen. You know, you have to protect yourself. I can't stop you from getting sick. Anyways, I don't know how much of that I'm even going to be able to use. If you liked the video, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.